Them was on, which is one of my favorite movies with the giant ants, which was filmed in Palmdale, and there's Joshua trees galore in that movie. So there's tons of Joshua trees, as there are in many a 1950s sci-fi flick, which I grew up on. So sometimes I wonder if coming here, I remembered that somehow and it felt familiar or felt like home because I had seen it in so many films, and it, maybe subconsciously I'm like, oh, this is familiar, this is home, that's where that giant ant attacked those people.
Hi, and welcome to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast, 30-minute conversations with women who have found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm Dawn Davis, and this is episode 141. There's more information about the podcast at the website, desertladydiaries.com. And to engage with guests, listeners, or me, follow and like Desert Lady Diaries on Instagram and Facebook.
Born a Jersey girl in the shadow of New York City, Merilee Kuchon was raised on brown bags of Budweiser at CBGB. A former bad rock critic at East Coast Rocker and VIP entertainer at High Times. While road tripping in 2004, Merilee fell in love with Joshua Tree and a boy. She played music in Texas dives while running a co-op deli, later returning to the desert for good. Merilee and business partner Rosa Ficara recently opened Roadrunner Grab and Go on Park Avenue next door to the Joshua Tree Visitor Center in Joshua Tree. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Dom. Jersey girls in the house.
Yay, Jersey, pork roll. What was your first experience with the desert? Any desert, doesn't have to be this desert.
That's an excellent question because I grew up in South Orange, New Jersey, 20 minutes outside New York City. So my entire life was very suburban and urban. There were always other people, other houses, other buildings. And I have a distinct memory of going to visit my aunt, my mother's sister, who still lives in Encinitas out by San Diego. And Aunt Franny and Uncle Pete took us, I was probably about 5, maybe 6, on a little journey in their VW van out to Anza Borrego from Encinitas. And it blew my mind. I had never seen anything like that. Up till that point, my desert experience was like Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote cartoons, just from
dropping the anvil.
Yeah, just vast expanses of nothing. So it was shocking to me how much life was in the desert. All the plants, birds, just trees. Like, I thought it was going to be just sand. And I remember even as a kid just thinking, wow, this is beautiful and incredible. And I guess it stuck with me because here I am today. But, it didn't, in my mind, it's not something I thought about often. I never really thought I would leave New York.
Right. I think a lot of people are like that. They just think that that's going to be a place for them forever where they grew up. And for some people it is. And then for other people, it's just like, no, I either want to go and experience, or circumstance takes them, you know, somewhere, like jobs or,
especially New York, which I mean is, people from around the world, like that's a bucket list place for them, New York City, or, you go there from some small town to make it because that's your life. And growing up there, I felt like I'd already made it. That was my jam. Queen of New York City, as far as I was concerned.
Well, it was always,
the idea of running off was not top on my list.
Right, exactly. My dream was always to live in Manhattan.
Yeah.
I loved going into the city, but can't say never because life's not over yet. So you never know what can happen.
Yeah, exactly. I lived in Jersey City and Hoboken for a long time, but I lived in the East Village at 11th and First with my then boyfriend, John Dolan, for a long time. Just being right there in what felt like the heart of rock and roll and fun and debauchery. There was nowhere else I would have rather grown up.
So that's interesting though, because when I interviewed Jenny Q, I'm trying to make a correlation here. She said when she came here, it was just so weird and fascinating. And she goes, I'm one of those people that just loves stuff that's the weirder, the better.
Yes.
And I feel the same way. And I think you do too. Like if it's strange and odd and off the wall, you really like it.
The more weirdos, the better.
Right.
And I have to say, it was just Halloween and Them was on, which is one of my favorite movies with the giant ants. which was filmed in Palmdale, and there's Joshua trees galore in that movie. So there's tons of Joshua trees, as there are in many a 1950s sci-fi flick, which I grew up on. So sometimes I wonder if coming here, I remembered that somehow, and it felt familiar or felt like home because I had seen it in so many films. And it, maybe subconsciously, I'm like, oh, this is familiar. This is home. That's where that giant ant attacked those people. But yeah, I don't know. It is very weird out here, and that keeps it very interesting for me. I think I would get bored if it wasn't weird.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about you coming here. When was the first time that you arrived in Joshua Tree?
So in 2004, I was working at High Times Magazine in New York City, had my little Park Avenue view and my ridiculous salary, and my whole job was getting celebrities high, which was, paid really well. It had a lot of perks. But in the end, I was sitting at a desk behind a computer, and I didn't want to do that anymore. 9/11 had happened, which was shocking and terrible. And we were all right there for it, for the days and months and year after, for that smell, for the horror. It changed everything. It changed New York City. It changed me. And I just felt like you only live once. What am I doing, really? Is this really what I want to be doing? It had its great points, but in the end, I didn't want an office job, even if the office turned into Amsterdam and Jamaica and fun places every now and then. I wanted to see the world and do it while I was still youngish. So I convinced my then boyfriend, Sean, to ditch his job bartending at Maxwell's in Hoboken, and we packed up the car and went on a year-long road trip throughout mostly the Southwest US and Mexico. And while we were on this trip, my friend Chris Ward, who I'd known for years from just punk rock New Jersey life, wrote me and said, well, if you're coming to California, you've got to come visit me out in Joshua Tree. I'm the grill chef at Pappy and Harriet's. And I was like, Joshua, what? Pappy and who? So I was like, okay, it's on the way. We're going that way. It's between San Francisco and San Diego and Mexico. So we came to Joshua Tree, and it was awesome. It definitely helped to have a friend already living here.
Yeah.
So we basically showed up. We'd been camping for a year. We were literally just tent camping out of the car all across America. And we pitched our tent in his yard. There was a 1940s trailer on his property. It's one of Lori Herbel's properties over on La Contenta. And he's like, you could stay in the trailer. And I'm like, no, we're tent people now. Like, we're going to do this tent thing. We woke up the next morning with the tent like glued to our face because it was the worst wind that had ever existed, which was my very, very sudden welcome to Joshua Tree. This is the wind, which we've all experienced so many times since. So we quickly moved into the trailer, and we stayed for about a month. Then we went to Mexico, and then we came back and stayed longer. And it just felt really comfortable. It was the cost of living out here, at least then, was incredibly doable. You didn't have to do much to be able to afford a place, some beers, a bonfire. Like, that was it. That was life. It was really nice. And I met a whole bunch of weirdos, as we discussed earlier, which kept it interesting. And we had a good time. We listened to a lot of music. We played a lot of poker. We ate a lot of food. And we explored the desert and saw the national park. And we'd been to so many national parks, and it just really felt like a place we could live. Zion was gorgeous, but it was expensive and unrealistic. The parks around Moab were beautiful, but Moab, the community of Moab, just didn't really seem interesting enough. Here, Joshua Tree, there were enough artists, musicians, interesting people, creative people that, in addition to that cost of living, that's made it realistic that we could actually create a life for ourselves there without too much trouble. It felt like it anyway.
Right.
You never know what's in store, but it felt like that could happen. So we did come back. We stayed for a while. We went to Mexico. We came back. We stayed for a while longer. Then we went back to New Jersey. I lived there for a while and then came back again. I just kept coming back. And then I wound up meeting Doug and then moving to Texas for 5 years and then dragging his ass back to the desert because I didn't want to be in Austin. I had a great job again. We had a nice house, pool, like it was fine, life's fine. But it just wasn't fulfilling. It just didn't feel right. I didn't want to have a commute. I like it out here.
Yeah.
It's just a different world. And I think once you've experienced it, I mean, I'm sure not everyone, but once I experienced it, I didn't want to settle again for second best. I didn't want to do anything I didn't want to do, which was like sit in traffic, which was like all sorts of things that go in hand with the city. Were there fun things too? Of course there were. It just, this was the place for me. And I got to bring Doug back out here and that was really nice.
Had he ever been here before? And did you bring him here to visit before you said, okay, we're just moving here? Or did you just say, we're just moving?
I kind of said, I'm moving. Are you coming with me? Because I was just done.
Yeah.
I was just at the end of my rope and he was living in Texas and he's been there for 20 years. His kids were in Texas. I didn't know what he wanted to do, but in the end, he gave it a shot and came out and loved it. I mean, his favorite thing was just riding his motorcycle, and what better place to do that than here, building hot rods, driving around in crazy cars and riding motorcycles. I mean, it's a good place. It can be lonely, I think, for people, people who aren't me maybe, but that's the trade-off, I guess, or in my case, I feel like that's a desired quality. I like being alone.
Feel quiet. Exactly. Yeah.
Had a long life of being around a million people. Time for break.
Yeah.
I like my space. I didn't mind quarantine one bit.
Yeah, I feel you.
It's like my life only. No one expects me to do anything now. I don't actually have to say no to people. Just stay home with the dogs and do nothing.
There's a lot packed into your life. You had this job in New York City where you're editing rock magazine, and then you're a musician as well.
Yes.
When did you start playing music?
I started playing music when I was about 16 or 17. It's that whole do-it-yourself ethos, being really into punk rock and stuff like that. It's like, it's all the same. The people who make the music, who talk about the music, who go to the shows, who write about the music, like, you just do it all, So that was always part of it for me. So I was never great at it, but I really liked doing it. So I had a boyfriend who, I feel like this is the way with so many ladies. I had a boyfriend who played bass and he was gonna switch to guitar. So I grabbed his bass and started learning how to play bass to Ramones records.
That's awesome.
In my dorm room. So that was kind of a starting point. I played in a bunch of bands pretty terribly. I did not have the best self-discipline as far as practicing. But I like getting up on stage and making a bunch of noise in ridiculous clothes. That last band I was in, Blower, in Austin, Texas with Doug, that was a really good band. I practiced really hard. We went on tour a few times. We played a lot. We had a good following. We had like hundreds of people show up to see us play, and it was really fun all the time. It was the first band I was in that was, I don't want to say fun, but it kind of was. All the songs were just about like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Like there was no politics, which many of my bands have been very political, very dark, very heavy, which I'm into too. But this band was just straight up ridiculous, and it made it really fun. It was just like an escape for people. So even when people would come to see us, it was always a party, and that was really fun. And playing with Doug, who not only was my boyfriend, but he was my rock star. He was in the Digits, which was my favorite punk rock band of all time. So being able to play with him was really, really fun too. And he was really gracious and kind and nice about it, and not at all a dick, which I feel like he could have been.
Yeah.
But Yes, he was always very supportive, and he made it really fun.
That's cool. And then you all cooked together too. So how do we go from working with a magazine and then we're playing music and now you're cooking? Do you have formal training or did you just start cooking?
So when I decided I was going to live in Joshua Tree, which I decided, and said, I want to live out here. How am I going to make this work? There's no magazine out here. I can't just get the job I went to school for, which was journalism major. What am I going to do? And I loved cooking. It was definitely a passion of mine. And when I was at High Times, I actually went to culinary school on the weekends just for fun, just to learn. So every Saturday and Sunday, back in the days when there used to be a World Trade Center, I would go down right by there and go to French Culinary Institute and learn all sorts of things with my little chef hat on and make little fancy sauces and learn how to cut an onion and learn how to cook a lobster, all sorts of stuff, culinary food stuff. So I did go to culinary. It was just unintentional, I think. It was never meant to be a job. It was just for fun, just to get better at it and learn because I liked it.
Right.
And then when I was out here, I took a stab and put out a resume on Craigslist back in the day when Craigslist was maybe slightly less terrifying.
Right. I was going to say less creepy.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe
campy.
it was less creepy. I don't know. Maybe it was still creepy. But this was probably about 2006. I put it out that I was a private chef and just to see what I'd get back. And I literally the next day got offered a job in Indian Wells at a private facility. It was like a drug and alcohol rehab facility, very small, very fancy, paid very well. They hired me and I would go in and cook breakfast and lunch and make dinner and leave dinner for them to like reheat. And suddenly that was my job. Suddenly I was a private chef. I was no longer an editor. I was no longer anything, I wasn't a advertising manager. I was doing the opposite of High Times.
Totally.
But it was good. It was great. It was a really fun job and it was small enough that I got to be very creative. They were very nice. The people who went, of course, I would hope, were very grateful. They'd all been in pretty dark places and just really wanted to have some comfort food and be taken care of. It was nice. It was rewarding. So that was my first foray into cooking for a living, or turning my love of cooking and food into money. At which point I broke up with my boyfriend, who I had gone cross country with, and left to go to Texas to be with Doug. And I got a job as a deli manager at Wheatsville Food Co-op in Austin, Texas. So that was my continuation of sort of the manager side of my experience with the food side, and it worked. And I learned a lot. And that has led me to this point here where we are running our own deli and doing a damn good job.
Yeah, you are.
I'm really proud of us. I mean, we did the catering thing for a long time first. COVID killed our catering business. California didn't help with the other little laws that they love to crush small business with. I love California, but some things are tough.
Right.
But yeah, we're really enjoying this deli. It's been very nice.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, the food's delicious. So you get a warm welcome every time you come in, unless that's just me. I don't know.
It's especially you, but hopefully everyone gets a quarter of what you get.
Right. Okay. But talk a little bit about that process, because it wasn't like your standard, oh, let's rent this space and open up a deli. It was kind of, you had to go through an application process, and because you're leasing, I suppose, right? And then you also have some restrictions with the type of packaging you can use and all that sort of thing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, we found this lovely space courtesy of Don Davis.
I have to say, I got a tip. I can't take all credit for it.
Well, once I found out that Park Rock Cafe had closed and that space was available, I had been looking at deli spaces or even just cafe restaurant spaces for years. I mean, since since 2012 easily, seriously. And I'd been looking at deli spaces for the last year pretty earnestly and had not found something that was really seemed workable. And then when I heard Park Rock Cafe was gone, 2 and 2 made 4, and that was like, oh my God, that is the perfect space for what we want to do. It is so just a dream location, just being attached to the Joshua Tree National Park Visitor Center, having all the tourists that come through, also just having a great little space that's accessible to locals. It was small enough that it seemed manageable. You know, I looked at some other spaces, but some of them are just so large and wasn't really what we wanted to do. We really wanted to do a grab and go from the start. Being locals and liking to eat, it's difficult sometimes when you have to, pre-COVID anyway, had to wait online for an hour just to get in a restaurant, another hour for your food. Like, it's tough. And we just wanted to offer some alternative to that where people could just go in, grab their food, and get out all in like a 5-minute span. You know, everything we've done has been created towards that end. And I mean, growing up in Jersey and New York with delis on every block, you know, I mean, it seemed insane to me that that didn't exist here already. So it was just kind of bringing something that exists in other places here to the desert. So yeah, when we heard that space was open, I literally drove my car as fast as I could down. I'm running into the visitor center. I'm like, who's in charge of next door? What's happening? What's going on here? And I immediately got a phone number, made a phone call, and got to apply. I guess they'd looked at a few other applicants at that point, but they were having basically there was a whole rigmarole to go through to apply. So they were taking applications and you had to do a presentation. So you had to present a business plan, a profit and loss statement, an eco-friendly packaging and or products plan. There was, I don't even remember all the rest. There was a number of little boxes you had to tick. And so we immediately started working on a business plan. I mean, I want to say it was 10 days, you know, from start to finish between finding out that the space was open and then doing our presentation and tasting. And it went great. And I think it went so well because we already knew what we wanted to do. I already had a business plan. We just tweaked it to fit the national park, which was fantastic to even be able to do that. I mean, we named some of our sandwiches after desert conservationists. You know, we have junior ranger sandwiches. It made it so much more fun even to be able to adjust the business plan to meet that. So that was really great. We had a great presentation, we had a great tasting, and it was at least a month, if not more, later that we found out that we got it out of about, I think, 12 applicants, which was really nice. I mean, we had worked hard on it, and we also felt like we were a great fit and that our vision really matched what they were looking for. So it was rewarding to know that they agreed with us and be given that opportunity. So that was exciting.
Yeah. So for someone listening who hasn't been there yet or is unfamiliar, talk a little about what you menu and what you're offering there.
Yes, we have several deli cases. We're doing all sorts of sandwiches and subs and salads, everything from like green salads to potato salad, kale salad, pasta salad. We've got all sorts of little platters like a tuna niçoise, like a hummus meze platter, charcuterie platters. The subs we do are definitely Jersey influenced. We've got our Italian, we've got a caprese, we've also got turkey, just all your classics, roast beef. All the meat is from Boar's Head, who we literally pulled over on the side of the road to get their phone number and make sure we could get them, because I'd been working on that for a while with not a ton of success until Sue B literally pulled the woman off the road and got that number. So we're so delighted to carry Boar's Head. That's a little East Coast for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got a full hot case, which is the most interesting thing, I think, and that was like, came in a vision later. We're trying to figure out how to do hot food fast. You know, we don't want people to wait. And we just reimagined what one of those cases that basically holds the rotisserie chickens at Vaughn's. Like, what a waste. It has like 6 chickens in it all the time. Why doesn't it have everything in it?
Right.
So basically that's what we do. We got one of those, and now we've got breakfast burritos, breakfast sandwiches, hot lunch dishes, mac and cheese, chili, all sorts of stuff. Every day we're just creating more stuff and figuring out what else we can put in that case, especially as it gets colder, more hot stuff.
Right.
And it's just a constant play with like, how much space do we have? What can we put out there? What do we have storage room for? Because it is a small space, but we're trying to do a lot out of it.
Well, you're accustomed to that, because any of the places that I worked with you all when you were doing the catering were pretty small spaces too.
So. Yeah, indeed. We are good at making the best out of what we've got. And I feel like that's a desert thing too. But yeah, we also have a full coffee menu, tea menu, trying to make everything homemade as much as possible, so everything's real fresh and tasty and interesting, because that's what we do. I mean, going from the catering to this, you know, it's like we're just picked all our favorite stuff, and now we're just making it every single day instead of just for treats or just for weddings.
Right. Because you even got, I just finished off my pumpkin muffins last night.
We're good. We're gonna
get cookies and chia pudding, and
yes, don't forget the sweet stuff. Exactly.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And then a selection of California made items, like some jams and jellies. And I did try those tortilla chips, the surf. They were really good.
Yeah, Rusty's. He's literally just like some surfer dude in Huntington Beach who makes chips. It's like the best.
Yeah, they're good.
So delicious. But yeah, we're that was one of the other big things, and that was a part of our business plan, was sourcing as much as we can locally, and locally to the desert really means in California. So we have our whole Made in California section, and yeah, we've got jams and honey and crackers and granola and nuts, all sorts of stuff that it was really important to us that were California made, especially being part of the visitor center. Just having people who maybe that's their only stop in California, especially when we get the international visitors back again after COVID or during COVID. Yeah, sometimes people just head out to Vegas and they'll just dip into Joshua Tree and do everything else in like Utah or, you know, Grand Canyon. So sometimes this is their only stop. So we're really trying to push that Made in California food angle. I know when I travel, I like to pick up honey and interesting things from different places. So just figuring that's gonna be a thing, and so far so good. People are excited about it.
Yeah, great. So that people can see your food and follow on Instagram.
Yes, roadrunner.grabandgo.
Okay. And then your hours, are you 7 days?
We are 7 days every day. That was actually in our lease. The Joshua Tree National Park Association wanted us to match their hours. Okay. So we're open 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. 365 days a year. We'll see you on Christmas.
No. We have Christmas cookies.
Maybe we'll have Christmas something. You come in, I'll make us something good.
Right.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good. We need a little sleep, but other than that,
no doubt. Yeah. Well, you know what? You'll get your rhythm down. You know, you'll start to see some patterns, and smart girls, you'll figure it out.
Absolutely.
And you have an excellent staff. Really.
We
reliable, trustworthy, always
out with our applicants. I mean, it's not even like we turned away a bunch of people. We just got a great crew to apply, and everybody's been really good. Everybody's excited about the deli, about the project, about everything. So it's good. It's fun.
Well, and you know, I don't know about you, but I mean, I don't really pay people in my shop, but I do consign artwork. And once a month, I have to write those checks to those artists. And there's just something that really feels good about being able to do that.
Yes. And that was actually part of our business plan too, was helping our local economy and really supporting local vendors, which is, you know, part of our whole Made in California thing. Some are very local, and hiring people and keeping people employed and keeping taxes in our community and keeping people's families fed. That was really important to us with our catering business too. You know, it felt really good. I mean, we'd have 50, 60 people work for us a year I mean, it was a lot. It was a ton. So that was definitely part of our new project goal, was to really just make sure we're employing people from the local community and keeping our money as close to our community as we can.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today to talk about how you found this place, how this place found you, and how you've got this new venture up and running. That's I wish you all the great success that you deserve. So
thank you so much.
You are welcome.
My pleasure. I love you.
I love you too. But before I let you go, we're going to do that diary unlocked thing where I pick 4 questions from the jar and ask you. And those Merilee's answers to these questions will only be available to Patreon subscribers of the podcast. It's exclusive content called Diary Unlocked. So let's see what we're going to ask Merilee.
Secrets.
Okay, so we've got, what's one of the scariest things you've ever done? What is something people would be surprised to learn about you? Ask me one question. Uh-oh. And what is the other one? What's one important thing people should know about the desert? So if you would like to hear Merilee's answers to those questions, go to desertladydiaries.com, click on the support page, and learn how to become a patron of the podcast. Merilee Kuchon, my fellow Jersey forever.
Hell yeah.
Thanks for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dawn.
I've got a bunch of shout-outs this week. Much appreciation to new Patreon supporters Jessica G. and Katie W. Thank you so much. I hope you're enjoying the full Diary Unlocked catalog. And a couple of more shout-outs this week to Liz L. and Jeannie H. Thank you so much for signing up for the new episode newsletter. And one more shout-out to new desert resident Natalie, who I met at Soul Connection. Thanks so much for stopping in, Natalie, and thanks for listening. Would you do me a favor and just take 1 minute to give this podcast a review, comment, or like on Apple or Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, or whatever platform you're listening from? And did you know you can now listen on Amazon Music? Why, yes, you can. Thanks so much for listening.